Prince George controlling his younger brother's charm. The lambrick uniform he often wore. He wasn't alone this time climbing Adelaide Cottage's steps. He was followed by a boy his age in ill-fitting clothes and tattered footwear. A cottage employee froze from the window. George often brought home stray footballs, library books, and stories about new classmates. But this was different. The boy didn't look like classmate. He seemed disoriented and unsure of his purpose. George, however, appeared resolute, confident in the small way a child can be when they know they're doing the right thing and don't care how bizarre it seems to grown-ups. Prince William reviewed environmental charity materials inside. He had many ordinary meetings in the morning. He had just put on his weekend clothes, a comfortable jumper and pants, to spend the afternoon with the kids. But a staff member intervened. "Sir, I think you should come see this," she added gently, not trying to seem worried. She needn't. William could tell from her voice that something unexpected had arrived. He observed George enter the corridor with one hand clutching his backpack strap and the other gently nudging the other boy ahead. George looked up and smiled faintly. "His name is Jacob, Dad." He had nowhere to go. William blinks. Not what he expected. He stared at the other boy, who stood with his eyes on the floor, undecided whether to take off his shoes or rush outdoors. "Hello, Jacob," William said cautiously. "Why not enter the kitchen together?" George didn't need reminders. It seemed natural for him to lead Jacob through the corridor. Will followed, wondering what happened, yet too curious to stop it. Kate unpacked groceries in the kitchen. She turned to find the foreign boy standing near her son, astonished. "George?" she asked. Jacob repeated, "Mom. We played football by the school during break. He said he lives nearby but doesn't attend school." I inquired why, and he responded he's homeless. Kate's eyes widened slightly as she regarded George and William. Not fear, simply a quick surge of grown-up worry that wants to help but needs more information. George said I permitted him to join me. It seemed we could help him. The pause was thoughtful. William crouched, matching Jacob's gaze. "How old are you, pal?" he asked quietly. Jacob whispered 11. "Same as George?" Jacob nods. Kate advanced and kneeled. "You hungry?" He nodded again. Kate set out toast and fruit in minutes. George sat next to Jacob and pointed out items like he was showing a buddy his home. The dynamic was stunning. Nothing uncomfortable happened between the boys. George wasn't pitying Jacob. He treated him like a local. William and Kate glanced. Their eyes showed caution, not panic. All the parenting books and royal procedures they'd studied didn't prepare them for this. William gently asked Jacob where his parents were after he ate. Jacob's answers were brief but descriptive. His mother lost her work, so they moved from place to place, staying in their car or shelters. He hadn't attended school in months. Didn't complain. He explained clearly. Honestly, like a kid. George listened. That shocked William most. His son didn't just hear a sad story and go on. He listened and acted. William and Kate sat in the living room later that evening after Jacob had gotten dressed and was playing in the garden with George and Charlotte. "Is this recurring?" Kate asked gently. "No," William said. "Unfor George." The two youngsters laughing as they kicked a ball caught his attention through the glass. Jacob was relaxed now, smiling as he hadn't in days. William recalls Diana taking him and Harry to shelters as children. She showed them life outside the palace gates. He never forgot it. Now George had done something similar without being asked. William observed. He instinctively knew this wasn't finished. The next morning, Adelaide Cottage was in a different mood. The quiet mansion in Windsor's fortified estate now had the faint hum of a street child sleeping beside the future king. Jacob got clean clothes, a comfortable bed, and was treated well. Prince George got up early to see if Jacob was there. He crossed the hallway and entered the guest room, where his new acquaintance was still sleeping beneath the blankets with Lupo's old blanket over his legs. Back in the kitchen, Kate was awake. She carried a list, not a royal schedule. Mothers had to buy clothes, make calls, and prepare. Despite being astonished, she was prepared. She knew the home she and William had built with effort. She wouldn't allow confusion or fear shake that. William contemplated everything outside with a cup of tea. He spent years improving his relationship with his children after growing up in a castle where feelings weren't always acceptable. However, George went further. William made some discreet calls later that day. He didn't want Jacob's position in the news. Don't broadcast or label this a charity effort. He contacted one of the local assistance organizations outside Windsor, which Diana visited secretly in the 1990s. He gave them only the necessary facts, omitting George's role. "Want us to take him?" she politely requested on the phone. William stopped before replying. "Not yet," he said. "Keep the line open for now." Inside again. It was George and Jacob at the dinner table. Charlotte sat nearby, intrigued but not nosy. Louis, younger, was more interested in Jacob's trainers, which had been changed with a fresh pair from a neighboring shop that morning. They were plain and warm, not designer. George started by glancing at Jacob while eating toast. "You can wait under the trees when we return to school. I'll come out as soon as I can." Jacob nodded but stayed quiet. He wasn't quite sure how long he was allowed to stay here or what the rules were. That night, William pulled George aside for a private conversation in the sitting room. There was no scolding, no raised voice. William had never believed in that approach. Instead, he crouched down to his son's level. "George," he said, "can I ask you something?" George looked up. "Why did you bring Jacob here?" There was a long pause. George's mouth twisted a little, as if he wasn't sure how to explain it. "He looked cold," he said at last, "and kind of tired. He didn't ask me for anything. He just sat there, and I didn't think it was fair." William nodded slowly. "You know," he said gently, "you did something very brave, but you also did something big, something that comes with responsibility." George looked uncertain now. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," William said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You did something I admire, but I want you to understand what comes next. Jacob's life isn't like yours, and he might need things we can't give him ourselves. But that doesn't mean we walk away." George nodded. He didn't have all the answers, but he understood enough. "I want to keep being his friend." He said, "You can." William replied, "We just have to find the right way to do it." That evening, Kate found William standing by the garden window again. Jacob and George were tossing a football between them. There was laughter, light, careless, like kids should be. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Kate asked softly. "I think we're doing the only thing we can," William answered. Over the next few days, Jacob stayed with them just as someone who belonged for now. William arranged for regular check-ins with the local council and child services. They were discreet, careful not to alarm Jacob or treat him like a case. Kate took on the softer details, meals, helping Jacob feel comfortable, making sure he had the same kinds of small joys the other children did. She even asked their favorite housekeeper to add his name to the breakfast tags. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. As for George, he never bragged about what he did. In fact, he hardly spoke about it at all to others. He just acted like Jacob had always been there. But William and Kate knew better. They saw it in how their son walked taller, not out of pride, but out of purpose. They saw it in how he watched Jacob, not to manage him, but to include him. And they saw it in how their home had become more alive, more open, more real. Still, they both knew this moment wouldn't last forever. Something was coming. And when it did, the world outside the gates might finally catch on to what was happening inside. The following Wednesday, the family had managed to keep Jacob's presence quiet. But that kind of privacy never lasted long in royal life. Even for someone like William, who had spent years building barriers between the public and his personal world, nothing stays hidden forever. That morning, George and Jacob were playing in the garden when a royal staff member approached William with an iPad in hand. "It's starting to spread, sir," she said. "A local posted something yesterday, said she saw a second boy walking into the cottage with Prince George last week. Didn't name names, but people are asking." William took the device and scanned the article. It wasn't hostile, not yet, just curiosity. But that's how these things usually begin. Someone notices something, and within days the press starts circling, trying to fill in the blanks with whatever they can get. Inside the house, George didn't seem concerned. Jacob had been with him for several days now, and to him, this was just how things were. They played football, watched movies, and read books in the study like any other school holiday. Jacob even helped Charlotte build a puzzle the day before. It was the most relaxed anyone had seen him since he arrived, but William knew this peaceful window was closing. If the story caught traction, Jacob's privacy would be the first casualty. He met Kate in the upstairs hallway, just outside the children's rooms. She had just tucked away laundry and looked calm, but William saw the tiredness in her eyes. "They've noticed," he said. Kate nodded slowly. "Thought it may." She said that we must proceed without having Jacob feel taken away. That was difficult. They gave the youngster normalcy for days, something he hadn't experienced in many. Any quick change made him feel like he being passed around again. William sat with George and Jacob in the drawing room that night. Both lads were flipping through an atlas while the fire was going, listing countries they intended to visit. William spoke after a pause in their discourse. He asked gently, "Jacob, may I ask?" Jacob raised his eyes. "Would you like us to find you and your mom a nearby place? Something safe to help her recover and keep you in school?" Jacob was slow to respond. He closed the book and regarded the cover. He said he wouldn't leave. Not yet. George looked at his father, apprehensive. "Can he stay longer?" William peered between. "Giving him and his mom a fresh start is our goal, but we'll do what feels appropriate." William called a local housing help unit for crisis-stricken families later that night. He wanted options, places to visit, schools nearby, and agencies ready to help, all handled properly and without notoriety. Kate slowly prepared Jacob for change. She tackled major circumstances with kindness and tiny steps, as she always did. She assured Jacob he could talk to her, that nothing would happen suddenly, and that George would always be in his life. But then, something unexpected happened. Friday morning's tabloid headline asked, "Who is Prince George's mystery friend?" The photo appeared fuzzy and distant. Definitely from outside Windsor, but the implication was clear. George had a baby boy, and the press demanded answers. William noticed it while drinking tea in the kitchen. Warning words flashed on the screen. Kate entered shortly later. Alert. "We do what?" she asked. William responded, "We safeguard them." He meant more than George and Jacob. He meant family. Because if this story blew out, it wouldn't be a gossip column footnote. It would test everything he and Kate had built, a safe home for their children and a life where compassion can be shown without being scrutinized. William spoke with Palace Communications that afternoon. He didn't want the tale denied. That would fuel. He requested silence, no confirmation, no images, and no public outcry. Media didn't push too much, unexpectedly. Some pondered, but most ignored it after a few days. Maybe because there was no official response. Perhaps because the story didn't match their normal storyline. Perhaps they understood this wasn't a tale to alter. Inside the cottage, life continued. George and Jacob stayed close. They knew the adults were doing something behind the scenes, but it didn't impact how they played, laughed, or whispered secrets when no one was listening. One evening, William watched them from the window. A golden sunset in the garden. He considered what kind of monarch he wanted to be. Not just the one who delivered speeches or inaugurated hospitals, but the one who raised a son, cared, behaved even when it was inconvenient, and didn't wait for photographs before doing what was right. Things kept shifting. Jacob wouldn't stay, but none knew how fast the following bend was coming. The call came late Sunday afternoon. Jacob's mother was found. After a challenging scenario, she stayed in a shelter in a nearby town. Her phone was stolen, so she couldn't reach her kid for days. She searched support groups and walked near Lambrook School in hope for him. She reportedly cried when the social worker told her where Jacob was and who was caring for him. William accepted the call. In his home office, one hand rested on the chair back. He held the phone closely while listening to every word. "We've made Jacob feel protected and cared for," he stated calmly. "Yes, we can organize a private meeting for you both." After hanging up, he sat. He knew it would happen, but it hit harder than intended. George and Jacob were Lego building downstairs. Looking up from the kitchen, Kate saw William enter. His nod was to her. "She's found." Kate breathed deeply. Relief and grief flooded her face. William contacted George again that evening in the back garden. The sun set below the trees on a cold evening. George went with his father silently before William spoke. "Jacob's mother lives. She's seeking him." George stared down at the grass after blinking. "He's leaving? He'll be back with her, but that doesn't end." William responded. George nodded slowly, but William could see the conflict in his son's face. He was proud, but also a bit heartbroken. "I really liked having him here," George said quietly. "I know," William replied. "And I think he really liked being here too. You gave him something he'll never forget." That evening, Jacob was told the news. At first, he didn't react. Then, after a few seconds, he smiled. "Can I see her soon?" he asked. "You can see her tomorrow," Kate said. The next day, social services scheduled a meeting. It was a tranquil, secure home where reunions could happen without pressure, not the palace. Neither William nor Kate attended. Jacob and his mother should have the moment alone. George asked to join. Jacob halted at the door, terrified. George gently nudged him. "She's waiting for you." And with that, Jacob walked inside. The hug between mother and son lasted for nearly 2 minutes. George stood off to the side, holding Kate's hand, watching silently. After the reunion, there were plans to place Jacob and his mother into temporary housing not far from Windsor. William had ensured that any arrangements would allow Jacob to continue seeing George in a real private way, like play dates, school meetups, and holidays. Back home that evening, George was unusually quiet. "Do you think he'll be okay?" he asked Kate. "I think he's going to be more than okay," she said. "Thanks to you." Later that week, William sat in his office reading letters from the palace's internal staff. Some had caught wind of what had happened. A few words had leaked through small talk or soft chatter among staff, but the notes weren't filled with questions. They were full of admiration, praise, and gratitude. That something human had happened within those walls. One letter stood out. A gardener had written a short note. "I've worked here nearly 30 years. I've seen princes, dukes, kings in waiting. But what your son did, that was different." William folded the paper and set it down. The press eventually moved on. With no public statement, no official confirmation, the buzz around George's mystery friend faded. A few headlines wondered, a few speculated, but then they let it go. But inside Adelaide Cottage, nothing was the same. George wasn't just a boy who lived in a royal house anymore. He was the boy who brought someone home because he saw something no one else did. And William? He had always known his son would carry the weight of the crown someday. But now he knew something else too. George wouldn't just wear it. He'd earn it. And it started with one simple act. He made room for someone else. What do you think about George's act of kindness? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.